need to do that, and then we need to turn on the music because that will cover up any copyrighted material that might happen our way. Oh Lord, why are you dropping frames like flies? Okay, we're done. John Delancey? Is John Delancey here? Yes, you are here. Okay, great. The distance. This is a take on the Chinese room thought experiment because it struck me as annoying, so I wanted to change it.
Imagine a native English speaker who knows no Chinese locked in a room full of boxes of Chinese symbols, a database together with a book of instructions for manipulating the symbols, the program. Imagine that people outside the room send in other Chinese symbols which, unknown to the person in the room, are questions in Chinese, the input.
Who do you look for?
And imagine that by following the instructions in the program, the man in the room is able to pass out Chinese symbols which are correct answers to the questions, the output.
You could make errors.
The program enables the person in the room to pass the Turing test for understanding Chinese, but he does not understand a word of Chinese. And in this native speaker is a native genome that encodes a particular human individual, the latest in a series of thousands of hominids that have existed about 2 million years in an unbroken chain of fucking that links him to the rest of biological life. And a genome who knows neither English nor Chinese, and yet encodes the capacity to learn language, had an even more convoluted procedure to perform. Instead of a box for that box is a box, there were rules that combined into statements of more precise content. The final expression might be a 3-digit number, or the verb drinks, followed by juice, followed by up apple. It might also be an incomplete representation of the Earth's biosphere, or a conjunction of spacecraft trajectories that intersect, or a spreadsheet filled with product prices from across the planet. What this final form told you, encoded by the human genome, was nothing in particular, perhaps not even information, but merely some linguistic effect, grammar, or style, and certainly not knowledge. Kurt Gödel has been called the most important person who never lived. His ideas have never lost their punch, and they are being re-explored again today in ways that bring Gödel back to relevance for a world whose influence on us may be even more far-reaching than that of Einstein and Planck and Gödel's father. One might take the current dispute as a theoretical extension of Gödel's battle with mathematical formalisms that led. The symbols manipulate the axioms, like children in a room of toys. Those axioms define the principles, and therefore also the meanings of what goes on. The goal is to make an adequate axiom system, or even better, to extend the system to handle certain unsolved problems of mathematics, or to read-your-eyes solutions of known but nevertheless valid mathematics from that system. It is not by any means clear how this battle will end, but if it goes on as it is going now, Gödel's people will certainly be the underdog. For it has become a battle over what mathematics means. If mathematics is truth, then to defend Gödel's incompleteness theorem, a contradiction, you need not use truth. Or mathematics is language. Or mathematics is a subject for mathematicians. Or mathematics is nothing and neither is science. Any or all of those assertions of modern theory of formalism, for example, seem to have come close to drowning the incompleteness theorem of 1931. All this might, to an innocent onlooker, sound as if mathematicians have spent much time lately in futile, useless speculations over a problem that is simply out of bounds and which should simply not have been framed to begin with. In a certain sense, though, that is what these particular debates amount to, but the specialists have made little or nothing of it. Of the few of the post-war mathematicians who were following Gödel closely at the time, a number have tried to popularize his ideas. They are in many cases widely read today. Several authors of works about Gödel in 1964, the year after he was published, but long after the new experimental math came of age, gave only passing notice to the existence of formal systems, to axioms, and to Gödel's argument against mathematical truth. Mathematical proof had a way of happening spontaneously, as it came to an end, or when somebody challenged its form, or results or claimed they had another method for showing the proof. Some even gave the impression that what mathematicians do is perform calculations. Many still don't connect a mathematical proof to Gödel's results, as if Gödel's ideas are as much a source of emotion and morality as they are a matter of math. These works usually borrowed ideas and insights from philosophers rather than from actual mathematicians, or failed to really consider what was being argued. While there are a handful of genuinely high-level presentations that do read like the classic work by Wittgenstein in this area Lecture Roman 2, and of some contemporary philosophizing, it has not been a typical feature of mathematics' most popular literature. And in popular books written about mathematical truths in general, Gödel is again much on the back burner. It would take several pages of an introductory mathematical text to present what I want to call the real Gödel, which would, moreover, be difficult since very few people in this field of mathematical non-fictions actually know what it is I mean, or would even care to have to think about it. Back in a Chinese room, the person in the Chinese room tried to output the symbols for, "Can I get a meal and some water? I'm starving," or some other clear and helpful message. His problem is not the syntactical one. He may also make the perfect representation of, "There are cats and there are people in this room, and their words are related, and their words have content, which I can learn and express," yet produce nothing even vaguely resembling the reality that is hidden there. All that is essential to knowing it, all the ineffable essence of his personal reality. So far, I have imagined that the problem is one of communication, but to tell a story without some background information and some key to connect that story to what went before it, like what might be contained in, say, an old letter, a problem that can be stated in an algorithm. Something like, make up a story, like the first 6 sentences in an old letter I don't read to the beginning, but can still be completed by a human. Is also a problem for Gödel and the idea that the whole universe is nothing more than a program of some sort. In fact, as we might see by looking at what is being called the new proof of the incompleteness theorem, Gödel himself, together with a handful of others, never settled the question whether such an algorithm is possible at all. Gödel's later work, with such key partners as René Descartes, Roger Penrose, and Howard Hawks, took the idea one step further, or perhaps upward, might be a better way to put it. It may now be thought of as having a structure not so much as one or other. The person in the Chinese room tried to output, "Can we keep this story to me and my hunger?" This time it might be as a natural language syntax, given an English sentence and the available symbols and the instruction book. The person in the room would also have a working program for deciphering English. The challenge is whether his linguistic knowledge includes enough understanding of English syntax and grammar that he could match the general method by which a person of better mastery in the language could think the story. This is another test, another level of representation, not the question of output, but rather an infinite regress that Gödel and his colleagues worried about to the point of discouragement and loss of purpose. We might think of all this, the complexity of expressing ideas in natural language versus the artifice of mathematical form, as defining a kind of scale of abstraction and complexity. It appears in the field of ontology, for instance. The discussion of when and how it is acceptable to describe a concrete event as having certain abstract properties like, say, spookiness. Spookiness implies something odd, something that violates regularity, like being able to pass through walls or remove gravity from an area, or say hello to you from a voice that emerges from a ghost in a haunted house. Somehow, this idea that any given program of symbols or natural language expressions can encompass an infinite array of possibilities, each more powerful than the last, is critical to the understanding of Gödel's seminal works and their ongoing relevance today. In terms of Gödel's impact on modern mathematical theory, his invention of a calculus for symbol manipulation extended the knowledge of the possible again and again, even at the level of principle and theory. The person in the Chinese room pondered which of the Chinese symbols looked the tastiest, the one he can see himself eating first. So he spit it out, deciding that if he could talk to the sender of the inquiry about cooking or flavor, or maybe where the best chef in the land could be found, he might be able to fill his belly in a more creative way, and so on until he passes out. Nonsensical, yes. Incomplete, sure. A nagging waste of time, absolutely not. His Chinese phrases come to life before him in colors and sensations in his memory, imagination, and taste buds. They are complex and vast, expanding and free-flowing, irretrievably open, and capable of creating an image not just of hunger, but of endless ways of dealing with it. They form a sequence or a story or a journey into unknown. It doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want. The question of the purpose and meaning of his experience in the room remains unresolved and even unexplained. What is it that this struggle of Chinese has wrought? Is it really just language, or did it lead to something bigger, greater, more wonderful than mere exchange of Chinese messages? Perhaps someone reading this will disagree or have an additional insight. But as I close, I want to offer two final thoughts. First, even as I've written about Gödel's ideas, a part of me wanted to suggest a simple, straightforward way out of the quandary. I have said that Gödel imagined that the axiomatic process was a human process, not a computer or mathematical one, but he ultimately recognized this was an illusion, and that mathematics might well be simply a complex program that machines could code and program without any risk of not comprehending its significance or beauty. It may be tempting to return to this position and say that, even if we imagine someone like Gödel coding this program and not understanding what it means, as Gödel did, the problem of communication is meaningless because we don't need to interact or communicate with him to understand the program. But this point overlooks two important aspects. First, if we can imagine Gödel's lack of understanding of the importance of the program and its properties and content, then we can also imagine that program not being useful, being designed incorrectly, or the person in the Chinese room outputs. Hey, it's getting stuffy. Is air coming in here? It feels like the world is closing in, but still able to run our process. It reminds me of something Nietzsche wrote. When you have comprehended the shadow that hovers, creeping like mist before your gate, then I will send you more of my thoughts. Second, and more important, these ideas strike at the heart of our shared human experience of mind, consciousness, and soul, where understanding and action are fundamentally intertwined and not necessarily transferable between individuals or groups. No machine may ever solve or complete this problem, not without the experience and understanding of human emotion and curiosity, imagination and memory, and the desire to express oneself with natural language, something that is, ironically, more godlike in its completeness and nuance and incapable of encoding in machine form. This perspective speaks to the uniqueness of individual life and experience. To turn it back toward the actual mathematical debates, the difficulty of the second incompleteness theorem can be viewed as a reflection of the incompatibility between mathematical formalism and ordinary language and consciousness. This problem of infinity and meaning also relates to the debate over the philosophical foundations of mathematics and questions such as, are numbers real? And do mathematical forms have a Platonic essence in the mind of God? Even as machines continue to improve and algorithms move toward modeling natural language itself, they may simply uncover a similar desire for human comprehensible form and an innate capacity for drawing meaning from patterns that extend beyond the mere transfer and computation of information. Ultimately, to find the answer to Gödel's conundrum, we might have to dive now. The person in the Chinese room outputs for perhaps the last time. Tell my wife I'm okay. He knows she must be worrying about him. He can imagine what his face and his eyes must look like to her right now. I miss her, and I haven't had a lick to eat since he entered this room. But he is okay, and soon, somehow, he will make it out of here alive, with a grip on the incompleteness theorem and a new taste for the delicious language of Cantonese. Perhaps beyond this plane, and not through mathematics, or the ineffable that may be hidden in the margins, the borders, or the transcendent.
I didn't see that last part.
Some strata of number theory, but through the experiential mysteries of love, consciousness, and change. A human being may hold two or more true propositions without contradiction. An algorithm can form sequences of any length that are simply or mutually consistent, but without knowledge or understanding. And where knowledge ends, human consciousness emerges, revealing and representing a reality that has perhaps not been perceived in a mathematical and mechanical model since the discovery of set theory and category theory. So while there is plenty more work to be done in this area of research, there is also no reason for skepticism. Experience and a connection to others and the acknowledgement of reality are not in the future of abstract mathematics, but already here in a space of freedom and awareness that was feared to be infinite, complete, or even comprehensible, but instead continues to unfurl before us. The office that contains the Chinese room closes for the weekend, leaving the person in the Chinese room inadvertently. Saturday comes and goes, as does Sunday. The room is suddenly empty, save for a letter received by the office. It is a complaint. That office is useless. It took us forever to get that poor sap out of there. One more minute and we would have had to file a lawsuit or something. Others might say the person in the room is hopelessly confused, or that it's probably just a bunch of jibber-jabber gibberish. There's no hope for understanding.
Oh, I hope he ate. Probably didn't eat. They probably haven't thought of it yet.